Hey everybody, this is Rich and you're with Tropical Beekeeping with Rich. My only excuse here is I'm pushing 70, which explains the tie-dye t-shirt, because yeah, I'm an old hippie. Brain fart. I've made reference to the slatted racks on many occasions, and somehow in my mind I thought that early on I must have done a video on the slatted racks. In reality, what I was thinking about was an article that I had written for our local newsletter on slatted racks and how I think that they are absolutely the greatest thing that ever came across for tropical beekeeping. They just have they're so versatile and have so many great uses. So having realized that, I'm going to kind of backtrack and actually do a little video here on the slatted rack. Now, right off the bat, I'm going to tell you that you can pretty much find all the information I'm about to tell you in one of Rusty Burlow's articles that was once in American Beekeeping, but American Bee Journal. But you can find it on her website, Honeybee Suite. That's all one word, lowercase, and suite is S-U-I-T-E, honeybeesuite.com. It's pretty much a definitive article on the uses of them, and I can't help but agree with everything that she says. But don't just read the article. Go down and read all the comments and responses underneath the article. It'll take you longer to read all the comments and responses than it will the article itself, but you get a whole lot more insights in the number of responses there. So what's a slatted rack? A slatted rack is a bee space between the bottom board and the first brood box. It acts as a patio, if you will, all through this area. It acts as a patio for the bees. Instead of on hot, muggy afternoons, the bees, instead of hanging on the front, bearding, okay, and you go out and you go, oh my God, are they getting ready to swarm? No, they're just bearding because it's hot and there's too many bees inside here, so they need to get out of the way. Well, they can do that by getting on the front of the hive, but here in South Florida, about the same time that it's getting so hot and humid that they need to be hanging out on front is also the time in the afternoon that our thunderstorms come up. We're east of Lake Okeechobee, gigantic lake, has its own weather patterns. The sun comes down, beats on it, the clouds move up, they form, they sweep east, and they dump afternoon rain on us. So all those bees are in front of the hive to get rained on. And, you know, what can they do other than go inside or go underneath or something else?
And they are a target for pests.
And if they're hanging out on the front, then, you know, the bufo toads can get to them a lot better, and some of the other animals down here that can eat them. Possums, you know, particularly at night, if it's too warm at night, and a lot of times our nighttime temperatures in the summer don't go down below 88 degrees at night, well, then it's just a smorgasbord for possums and things like that. So if the bees can be inside down here in this big patio area, it is just very beneficial to them. And if you say, well, what about winter? Well, I'll tell you what, lots of people have found that you can keep bees in Maine on these year-round with no problem, because it's still pretty much a dead air space. And one thing which I don't think is pointed out enough is that, yeah, there's room in between these slats, but if you have two bees across hanging up all up and down these slats, well, that pretty well seals off the brood chamber up here from any chill that might be going on as well. Since she just moved in closer, take a look. These have not been scraped. These have not been cleaned. Either one of these have been cleaned. The bees don't pay much attention to them. They'll seal them up a little bit. You'll notice there's a little bit of propolis around the edges here. Beyond that, look how clean these are, because this is in the area where the bees are cleaning. You know, what falls through the bottom board gets dragged out, but what falls and lands here gets cleaned out too. These things stay remarkably clean. So I've heard objections that, there'll be a lot of mess, but there's not. Burr comb, well, that's why this got designed. I'm going to go back to the beginning now. Around 1900, Dr. C.C. Miller determined that it was really critical, in his opinion, that bees have a 2-inch space underneath the bottom of the brood comb. And so he started out making a 2-inch shim that he put in there, and later on he just made his bottom boards with 2-inch high sides. And he just accepted the idea that every now and then he has to go off and clean a little bit of burr comb out from underneath the racks. And by the way, well, it wasn't actually a rack at that time. He had to clean it off the bottom of the frames. And I'm thinking myself now, well, okay, that's about where they would put most of their drone comb, would be underneath there. So if you're regularly cleaning out 1.5 inches of drone comb from underneath the frames, wow, what a great technique that might well be for varroa control. But regardless, that's just a thought for another day. When he began, after a bit of doing that, he decided to make a rack. The rack he made didn't look like this. It was nothing but bars of this nature going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, 5/16 space in between each one of them. And that's the way things pretty well stood from about 1904 to about 1950. In 1950, a man named Carl Killian figured out that if you put a 4-inch board in the front, then there was no light being reflected back up in here. There was no churning air up in here. It made it a lot quieter, and it made it so that the bees built their comb closer to the bottom corner, because they had noticed that a lot of times the bees built their comb kind of like this. And now they would start laying the comb in all the way up here. But at that point in time, the bars were still going this way behind that 4 inches. And then around 1960, a guy named Bovard in Hawaii started putting the bars parallel to the frames so that there wasn't any little bit of burr comb in there or anything else. And of course, we continue to do that to this day, because at first they thought that this was great for varroa control, because the frames would line up here and any varroa that fell off would fall through these slots and down through the screen mesh down here to your sticky board or your oil tray or whatever you had underneath here. Since has been proven to most people's satisfaction that that's pretty minimal, pretty minor. But still, the slatted rack, for its own sake, for the bee's comfort, is more than enough for this. Now, making them yourself, you can. There's plenty of plans on the internet giving you dimensions and things to make these yourself, but it's simply not something in this nature that I want to try myself. Back when I was buying these, they ran $20 a piece, Man Lake or Dedant, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, that I got them for like $17.50 a piece, because I bought 5 or more. But today, check the Man Lake site and the Dedant site. Man Lake is $27.95 today. Dedant is $27.75 today. There are companies that have them $29.99. If you want to go on Amazon and buy one of these, hey, shipping and handling included is $40. So this is definitely one of those items that you're a whole lot better off buying 4 of to get above $100 from Dedant for free shipping, because while this is not something a commercial beekeeper, even somebody with just 200 hives, yeah, that's a $4,000 investment, and it's another piece of equipment to keep track of and all that sort of thing. So not likely. But for the backyard beekeeper who only has 3 or 4 hives, this is one of the most useful pieces of equipment I ever invested in.
Put it on holiday wish list.
Yeah, put it on your holiday wish list. If you have a beekeeper's wish list, put it on there. Now, interestingly enough, as I was clicking around this morning, getting prices on these, I found a company I've never heard of before called Beebuilt, and they not only have regular slatted racks, they have slatted racks that do not have the 4-inch board, and they're considerably cheaper. Just, the whole length this way. And they're also making the originals with everything this way, just top, front to back. And before you go, oh, well, this has been proven to be so much better, well, think about it just a minute. If you use a completely open front, like so many people do, then yeah, this is really valuable. But certainly my hives, I use an extremely reduced entrance because, again, this is South Florida. Our bees are African derived. And African derived bees do not like a big entrance. Interestingly enough, Dr. Jamie Ellis, if you ask him what he has at his own house, he has a completely open front like this and never has seen a whole lot of reason to close it up. He's not down here where we have the Africanized bees, but he did his doctoral work in South Africa where he was working with Africanized bees, and he noted there that the Africanized bees, if you put them on Langstroth equipment, that they put a propolis wall and left a little bit here. I've seen the same thing in some of my hives, even my ones that have a 1-inch circle drilled out of them for nukes. The bees will fill in all but 1 diameter bee space with propolis because they don't like a big opening. So the way I keep my hives with an extremely reduced opening is very conducive to the kind of bees I keep. Because even when you put a queen of known stock from Georgia in here, she's usually going to get superseded pretty quickly by something that's at least half Africanized. And they don't like a big opening anyway. So if you want to make simple slatted racks yourself that don't make use of the board here, and you just basically make a shim and then put a runner front and back and then put the boards on it, just remember to put them about 5/16 deep. I will mention, remember, these are not universal. This is the wrong way. It still kind of works, but you will end up with burrcomb up in here. You want it this way so that you have basically 5/16 below here to the racks so that you have a total of 3/8 inch of bee space, and they're not going to draw comb down into that. Yeah, pretty much. That's about all I wanted to cover on this. I absolutely believe in these. I have a whole lot of extra ones, despite the extra cost, because if I need to make some extra hives, I very quickly want to get them onto a slatted rack. If I'm moving a swarm, I'll just put them on a bottom board with a ventilated area in it. But if I keep the hive for any length of time, and it's oh boy, they're really starting to fill this out. Nobody's going to come take this hive off my hands in the next couple of weeks. I'll pop that box off and I'll put a slatted rack on, and all that bearding in the front, by that, if I do this 9 o'clock in the morning, by 2 in the afternoon, there's no bearding on the front. Quite honestly, the day I read about these in Rusty Burlow's article a few years back, I ordered them, they came in, I went out, I put them on my hives. I came out the next day, I had this panicked, momentary thought that my bees had all absconded. That they just all, we don't like this, we're out of here, and they'd all gone because I walked out and I'm like, where are all my bees? And nope, they were all there. They were just loving it. Now, you don't have to worry about something like this if you're using a either a 33 frame long lang or whether you're using a top bar hive or anything like that, because the unused area at the back end of the hive serves the same purpose. I learned when I was doing top bars, you don't have to make your follower board run right to the bottom and lay up against something. You can leave this much so the bees can grow underneath it, they're not going to, you put a few bars on the other side just in case they decide to draw a comb before you get around to it. But for the most part, they'll use that as a porch the same way that a Langstroth hive will use this piece. And we're starting to get some drizzle here. We're about to have a tropical storm come through in a couple of days. Mostly just rain, little bit of wind. Don't even know if it'll be a storm when it hits us, whether it might just be a tropical low. But another band's coming through right now and it's starting to drizzle. So I'll
if you have any questions,
if you have any questions, put them in the chat, in the comments. Though first, if you go and read the wonderful comments that Rusty Burlow has in her article that you can find on Honeybee Suite, one of my favorite blogs, go check there first too. But South Florida, wouldn't want to be without them. So this has been Rich with Tropical Beekeeping with Rich. Be sure to like and subscribe. We're sneaking up on 500 members, and that's just so cool. So take it easy, everybody, and have a great holiday. Bye-bye.